Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome to today's video, which is a mega exciting one because I have all three of this year's Hourglass ambient lighting edits for holiday. I am so excited. This is always one of my favorite launches of the entire year, and this year is even more exciting because we have so many new shades. Hourglass finally listened to us and they finally gave us lots of new shades in each of these three palettes. So if you want to see swatches, if you want to see all three of these palettes on my face to see how they look and pick your favorite, and if you would also like some comparison swatches with previous years, I have quite a few to choose from. So we're going to do it all today. We're going to compare, we're going to swatch, we're going to try on all together. I cannot wait. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first things first, all of the information that you need to know about these three limited edition, that's right, cheek palettes from Hourglass. So these release every year around this time. They get slightly earlier and earlier, I feel, each year. This year, we're like the very beginning of September. I'm sure last year we were at least for a couple of weeks closer to Christmas, but I'm not complaining, the sooner the better in my eyes. This year we have three palettes. These will set you back £90 or $90. Last year's palettes were 86, so a £4 price increase, which I don't love any kind of price increase, but that seems kind of in line with inflation, so fair enough. These are limited edition and I do expect these to sell out this year. Last year's, I feel like we were all a little, you know, relaxed. We all thought they're going to stick around for a very long time because the last few years, like 2021, 2022, these palettes started to sort of lose popularity because they were becoming so repetitive. We had so many repeat shades and some even entire repeat palettes that we all started resting on our laurels a little bit and thinking we've got time, they're going to be around forever. These were last year's palettes, Leopard, Jellyfish and Snake, and they did all eventually sell out everywhere. And I've had so many comments from you guys that are so sad whenever I use particularly Jellyfish, because I think that was the first to sell out, the most popular, and it's a gorgeous palette, and so many of you I know missed out on it because we all thought we'd have a really long time to shop these. They don't usually, or they haven't in recent years, sold out so quickly. So I would be careful with these. I do think these will sell out. I don't know when, how much stock Hourglass got for us this year, but because each of these three new palettes this year have 5 brand new shades in them, the only repeat shades, the only re-promoted shades in any of these palettes are the finishing powders, which I think is fair enough. You know, we only need a certain number of those that suit our skin tone or they don't, but we have been crying out, begging Hourglass to give us all new blushes, highlights, bronzers in these palettes, and they've finally done it. All of the blushes, bronzers and highlights in all three palettes are brand new, which saves me a job because usually I have to try and find the palettes they've been in before, but I didn't have to do that this year because they are all brand new. So for that reason, and based on last year's palette's popularity, I do expect these to sell out. I don't know how quickly it will be, but if you desperately want one, I wouldn't probably hang around for very, very long because they probably are going to go sooner rather than later. Also, please note that you can pick and mix between your color story and your palette design. So you can pick the dragon color story and put it in the Lotus Flower packaging, the evil eye color story and put that in the dragon packaging. You can customize whichever color story with whichever palette packaging you like as you wish. You can do whatever you like. I have kept mine in their original components because I feel like it's so confusing if you're reviewing something and it's not what you think is in here. So I had got the Lotus Flower in the Lotus Flower packaging, the dragon in the dragon packaging, and the evil eye in the evil packaging. So we're keeping things simple for you guys today, but for you, you can customize and swap palette with cover however you'd like. Okay, so let's take a look at each palette close up and see some swatches. I'm excited. Okay, so first up we have the stunning Dragon palette. free bit of ASMR for you there. There she is. Wow. I mean, it's so much more beautiful in person than I was expecting. And there she is with all of the products inside. Wowzers. So this is the lightest of the 3 palettes available. So this is your best bet if you have a fair, light to light medium skin tone. This is the palette that is designed for the fairest of the fair beauties. And in here we have Dreamlight, which is not listed as new, but I do not know where this has been before. I have never seen this in another palette, so I think this is also new. We then have Peach Fusion, which is a soft peachy pink brand new blush for this palette. And then we have the second ambient lighting finishing powder, and that is also a brand new shade. So I think this whole palette is the only one that has 2 ambient lighting powders, finishing powders, and is also the only palette with all new shades. Dreamlight, Peach Fusion, and Divine Light. So you can see from my skin tone, this palette is going to be a little light. The finishing powders are a little light for me, and the blush is very subtle. And then on this bottom row, we have another brand new blush, which is Mauve Haze, described as a soft plum. We then have a brand new bronzer, which is called Soft Bronze and is described as a matte natural bronze. I think this bronzer was scaring a lot of people because in the photo it looked very deep, but it actually is going to be perfect for lighter skin tones. And then finally, a brand new strobe lighting powder in the shade Sunlit Strobe Light, which is a pale pink champagne. So we have Mauve Haze, Soft Bronze, and Sunlit Strobe Light. And this is the entire Dragon palette swatch for you. So I think you can see this is going to be, I can use this for sure. I would need to build the bronzer up. The finishing powder's probably a little too light, but the highlighter and the blushes, again with some building, I could absolutely use. For shade reference today, I'm wearing Tom Ford's Shell Beige Soft Matte Foundation. And I will compare all of these at the end along with all of the previous editions that I own. Okay, next up we have the Evil Eye palette, and this is the sort of medium palette. So if I was choosing just the one, this is the palette that I think I would go for. More free ASMR. Again, the packaging, wow, the photos do not do it justice. It's stunning. These lids, by the way, it is that same tin packaging where the lid is floppy, it doesn't stay up by itself, but it does have a great mirror. And not only is this the sort of palette that I expect to like the most because it's suited to my skin tone, but it also is just my shades to a T. I'm so excited that we've got like a more neutral blush, more neutral bronzers from the looks of it, and these coral tone blushes as well. This is right up my street. And the fact that this palette has 3 blushes in here as well, it's like it was made for me. So just the one finishing powder in here, which is fantastic. This is Soft Light, which is a pale peach. We then have a strobe lighting powder named Rose Gold Strobe Light, which is a soft rose gold. And then finally on the top, we have an ambient lighting blush, Pink Fusion, which is a cool pink. So here we have Soft Light, the ambient lighting powder, Rose Gold Light, Rose Gold Strobe Light, sorry, that looks perfect, and Pink Fusion. You can see the step up there. The ambient lighting powder looks much better for my skin tone. We then have possibly the product out of all 3 of these palettes that I'm the most excited for. We have Oasis Glow, a shimmering warm apricot. I'm beside myself. Then we have Vibrant Coral, a True Coral. Both of those are the ambient lighting blush formulas. And then we have a new bronzer as well, Natural Bronze, which is a matte medium bronze. And here, oh, that blush, I know that's going to build beautifully. I'm running out of room because I started too high up. Oh, that bronzer. You do not see a neutral bronzer from Hourglass very often, but that looks right up my street. So again, all brand new shades. The fact that you can barely see that ambient lighting powder, this is going to be the palette, if you're a shade twin, that is the most suited for our skin tone. But Hourglass powders are very forgiving, very buildable as well, so maybe more versatile than you think, and usually I can pretty much use any of the 3 palettes with either a bit of building or a lighter hand. And finally we have Lotus Flower. I'm so excited to see this one now that I've seen the others and how beautiful the packaging is in person. Wait for the peel. Oh, that's so satisfying. Wow, again, the photos do not do these palettes justice. They're glorious in person. Magnetic closure in all 3. They're so hard to hold up because I really wish this stood up by itself, but wow, oh, that looks gorgeous. You can see how much richer this one looks. This is the deepest of the 3 and best suited for tan to deep skin tones. A little look at them side by side. So here we have Lotus Flower and here is Evil Eye. So quite an increase in depth. But I would say, as usual, we could have gone deeper than this. But having said that, I'm excited to swatch these and to see this palette on deeper skin tones, because I think this is possibly the deepest overall palette we've seen from Hourglass. Let's have a look at it next to Snake, which is the deepest from last year. Yep, so here's Snake next to Lotus Flower. Overall, definitely Lotus Flower is richer. And they've skipped out on the marbling in these shades as well, which can lighten them because the marbling, you know, it has a lighter and a deeper shade mixed together. There's no marbled shades in here, so I think that's going to help with actually how deep they are on the skin versus some of the more marbled shades that we've seen in previous years. But this looks stunning. So first up in this palette we have Gilded Strobe Light, which is a warm bronze gold. Ooh, look at that. Next up we have an ambient lighting blush, Desert Flush, which is a deep beige peach that I am beside myself for. We've been screaming out to Hourglass for peachy and neutral blushes for years, and they finally heard our cries. And finally on that top row we have the ambient lighting finishing powder in Eternal Light, which is a golden amber. So we have Gilded Strobe Light, nice deep highlighter, Desert Flush, peachy blush, definitely could be deeper, and we have Eternal Light, the finishing powder in this palette. And now for that stunning bottom row, we have Ambient Strobe Lighting Powder in Radiant Rose Strobe Light, which is a shimmering copper rose. We have another ambient lighting blush in Red O, which is a true red. And then we have the ambient lighting bronzer in the shade Bronze Heat, a matte deep bronze. So here we have Radiant Rose Strobe Light, another ambient lighting blush, Red O. Oof, that's nice and rich. And then the bronzer, Bronze Heat. And there we have the Lotus Flower palette. Really nice and rich. Bearing in mind these are all sort of a generous swirl and one swipe on bare skin. I think this looks a little light, but certainly can be built up. That I'm so excited about that. Like, I'm happy I have this palette just for that shade. I can use this bronzer, which probably means we need it to be deeper. Again, you could use this with a lighter hand. I think there's some really beautiful shades in here for deeper skin tones, and I like that we're seeing improvement every year from Hourglass. We've certainly come a long way from when they used to make one palette for light medium skin tones. Okay, so that is all of the information and the swatches. Let's try these palettes on my face so you can see how they might look on you and how they actually work in action. I'm excited. Okay, so obviously I do only have the one face. I'm so sorry about it. I could have done with more, just being honest. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do the deepest palette and the lightest palette on half each of my face, and then we'll do the Evil Eye palette as a full face. Does that make sense? Because I think this is the one that's kind of meant for around my skin tone, so I think that will be the most useful if you're a shade twin. So let's do Dragon first on this side. I'm sorry if you can see this little white ghost at the bottom of the screen. Don't be afraid, it's not really a ghost, it's the top of my mirror, but I'm so sorry, that is as sort of low as I can have it, otherwise I can't see. Okay, so sorry, it's not a ghost though. Don't panic. So I'm going to use my Sonia TF3, one of her brand new brushes. Obsessed with these. This is my favorite set from her, which I'm going to use for the finishing powder. I'm going to use the deepest of the two. This is the only palette with two of these, and it has a sort of really bright, you know, brightening center face shade. And then this one was slightly less terrifying and bright for me. We're going on this side, and I'm just going to really lightly use this. This is not a product I ever really use. I don't really love these powders. I don't use a lot of powder day to day anyway. And these are quite glowy. You can see that's giving me a lot of glow where I typically don't want glow. And you can use these as buffing powders, etc. But the powders in here are too light for my skin tone to use all over my whole face. So I might use this as a bit of brightening in the center of my face, but I just don't prefer so much glow in the center of my face, if you see what I'm saying. But I just wanted to put it here so you could see the finish and the shade. If I put this all over my face, I'll look a little odd, okay? So just to clarify, we have the exact same amount as well in each of these palettes as all the previous years, 1.4 grams times 6, so each pan 1.4 grams. So we're going into that middle bronzer. I'm going to use my TF1 from Sonia, and this is nice in the middle. You can see there, it fits right perfectly in the middle of that. So you don't even really need to be particularly careful. I just sort of pull the product towards the bottom rather than sort of going like this, because then I'll get a bit of each product, but I'm just doing this and then I won't have any problems. Well, I almost went on the wrong side. Ridiculous lady. So let's go in with this bronzer. I mean, the bronzers, I would say in all three of these palettes are significantly less warm than really any Hourglass bronzer I've come across in my lifetime. I mean, this is definitely bronzing me for sure. So if you're around my skin tone, if you have a more medium as opposed to light, the bronzer is going to bronze you. It's just those ambient lighting powders, of which there are two in here. I wish there were none, frankly, personally, but one I'll accept. Two is too many for me. But bronzer, good, we can use that. It's much more neutral and natural than typical Hourglass bronzers are. It's usually one of the sort of least used products in these palettes for me because they're just a little too warm. But that is lovely, lovely jubbly. Next up for highlighter, there's only one option in here and it's this bad boy. Pretty excited about it, I'm not gonna lie to you. Maybe a little, no, actually, I'm all right with it. I thought it was going to be a little too metallic for me, but it's actually very pretty. And I probably could have gone slightly lighter handed there. It's looking fine. That's melted nicely actually into my skin tone. It's not looking too like grey and it's not leaving much of a cast. So I think the cheek products in here will work really nicely for up to a medium skin tone, just not so much the finishing powders, unless you like them to really brighten up the center of your face or your whole face. You know, go for whatever you're going for. It's none of my business. Now, I know you all are most interested in this blush because one, it's got a bit of a whirly gig and we're all big fans of that. And two, it's a peach. And I know my peach friends, my peachy partners have been crying out for some peachy blushes. We've seen mauve blushes from Hourglass before, but we haven't seen very many peaches. So I think I'm going to go with that one. So that's not showing up on me just yet, but give it a minute, okay? Give it a chance. We're going to try and build this and we're going to see. It's there, you know, it's there. It's subtle, perfect for fair and lighter skin tones, and I can absolutely use this. This is the third building, but now we're seeing a peachy cheek, you know? So delightful. I'm excited for it. Okay, so here we have the Dragon palette in all her glory. I'm really happy with that. I think that's super pretty, really gorgeous and glowy. I'm really excited that the bronzer bronzed me and that the highlighter isn't looking really stark and too bright. I'm excited about it. I think that's beautiful and I can definitely use this. Hallelujah is what I say. Okay, so on this face, on this side, we're going to use the Lotus Flower. Oh, she's delightful. I'm already excited for it. Now in here, there is no finishing powder. If you're going to buy this and you have a lighter skin tone, there's nothing in here you could use as a finishing powder, which is fine by me because I don't like them. So I'm going to use this, which is the finishing powder for deeper skin tones. I'm going to use this as my bronzer because I think this one down here is going to be a bit too red for my skin tone. So I'm going to use that warmer finishing powder and just see how that looks as a bronzer, because I think it's going to be great. And you could absolutely mix this with the actual bronzer and get something a bit more neutral. Let's try that. So this is the bronzer and the finishing powder mixed together, and you can see that reddish tone coming through. Now I use this very lightly and carefully, and this brush from Sonia is very light and fluffy and it gives you sort of an area application. So I can definitely use those two powders in there as bronzer and contour, mix them together or use them individually. But I think they will build very nicely for a much deeper skin tone than mine, because that's a very light hand. So as always, I will look for some deeper skin tone reviews of this palette, because it doesn't matter what I think or how I think it will work on people with a deeper skin tone. It matters what they think and how they like it and how they feel they can use it. So as soon as I start seeing some deeper skin reviews of this, I will link some for you in my description box so you can see it on someone with a deeper skin tone and also hear what they have to say. The highlight I think will be too deep for me. I kind of hope it is, because that will mean it will work better for deeper skin toned beauties, just who it's for after all. So let's see. Oh, that is beautiful though. But that is gorgeous. It is too deep for me. As I look forward, you can see the cast. So that's great, but the color is stunning. And that is so smooth. I think it's gorgeous. This also is a highlighter, but that's definitely going to be too deep for me, but I could certainly use that as a blush. But again, I'm going to use this shade here in the middle, because again, we've been crying out that I want to see actually if this is a little deeper on the cheeks in reality. Okay, so yeah, so straight off the bat, we've got blush here, whereas I had to build this up quite a bit. Here, straight off the bat, we're done. That's gorgeous. Wow, so beautiful. And that's helping that highlighter blend in a bit more. And why not? Because we just love to go overboard here. Let's do a bit of a blush topper with this shade. Oh, that's so pretty. Wow, that's gorgeous. Okay, well, you're in for a treat if you have a tan to deeper skin tone. These colors are stunning. So this is a built up version of the lightest palette and a very light-handed version of the deepest palette. Let's give everything a little buff. So this is great because I can definitely use everything in here, whether it be, you know, using it slightly differently than its intended purpose, but quite a versatile palette. You know, you could use this very light-handedly on a sort of medium, light medium skin tone without really having to take much care at all. And I think a lot of these shades will build up a lot as well. So very versatile shades in here. I'm going to try this blush, which is going to be too deep for me. You know, I could really use this very lightly, but I want to show what this has in it so that if you have a deeper skin tone, you can see, will this actually show up on me? How does it look? So I've just done a decent swirl in there. This is going to be flipping stunning on deeper skin tones, isn't it? Look at that. Obviously, this is not for me. nor should it be. But we have certainly got a really nice, that is a true red blush. Gorgeous, nice and rich and deep. Beautiful, we love to see it. Okay, so I'm gonna take all of this off, put my foundation concealer back on, and then we'll be back to try the third palette. Okay, we're back with a blank canvas and ready to dive into the Evil Eye palette, which I'm excited about because this should be the one where everything in here works for my skin tone. So I'm going to start off with the bronzer. Again, just sort of brush this towards the outside of the packaging and you shouldn't get any other products on there. Again, a much more neutral bronzer than we typically see in these palettes from Hourglass. And that lovely, buildable, forgiving formula where you can build as much or as little as you like, depending on your skin tone and just your preference. I think this is another bronzer that maybe looks a little frightening in the pan. It looks a little deep, but it's perfect. And it's nice to see more neutral bronzers. I really feel like Hourglass have been listening to us this year. They've given us more neutral bronzers. They've given us all new shades. They've given us multiple blushes. And definitely their most deeper skin tone friendly palette that we have seen so far. I feel like there's always room for improvement. Yep, so this bronzer can work for sure up to sort of medium to tanned, nice and neutral. It's really sculpting me, which I love. Gorgeous, really happy with that bronzer. So only the one highlighter in here, so no choice to be made, and I'm excited for this one for sure. Oh, it's quite intense, but then used more lightly on this side. I didn't pick any more product up. That's lovely. The shade is perfect. I definitely think this is probably the best suited to my skin tone of the three. But as you saw, you can use any of the three. You just kind of need to adapt how you're using the powders and maybe what brush you're using, or use a lighter or a heavier hand. Build or blend. This is the perfect highlighter for my skin tone though. I'm loving this. I'm not having to be careful with this, and I'm not having to go in and out multiple times and use a lot of product because these are expensive. You know, we don't want to be hitting pan on the third use. This is my favorite highlighter so far, okay? This is gorgeous. It's got a lot of intensity and it can really be built up, but considering that, it's still very smooth and it's melting into the skin very nicely while still giving a lot of glow for sure. So you know I'm going to have to use this blush. This is one of the products that I'm most excited for from all three palettes because it's like the most neutral blush I think I've ever seen from Hourglass. So again, it kind of shows they're listening to us, they hear our cries. So this is quite subtle on me right now. This is going to be one that I would need to build. I am kind of still in my summer skin tone. So I am building that, but it is then giving me a gorgeous, soft, natural blush, not too intense. Beautiful bit of luminosity to the finish, these ambient lighting blushes. I wish they hadn't got rid of their strobe lighting blushes. I really love those, but these are more smooth and luminous and not shimmery or sparkly. The formula is gorgeous, and having built that up, that is perfect. But again, you know, I did have to use a fair amount of product and a heavy hand, buildy, nicey blushy, you know? You probably don't know. I'm so sorry. So on this side, I think I'm going to use this terrifying blush right here because who doesn't love to laugh? I know I do. Okay, phew. You should never be scared of Hourglass powders. I don't know how many times I need this lesson, but they're always so forgiving that even this, which is terrifying to me in the pan, is actually so forgiving and pretty on the skin. I've always overused the products in here when I'm doing a review because I just want to show you, you know, what you can get impact wise if you have a deeper skin tone, or you just like a more vibrant blush. I don't know how I'm going to pick a favourite, to be honest. Let's try this shade over here just to see if you can see it on the cheeks. I mean, these are all such wearable shades, and actually those two went together really beautifully. Now this finishing powder is perfect for my skin tone. You saw how it was almost invisible when I swatched it. So I'm just going to use this to sort of buff around the edges and just sort of diffuse everything. And it's not lightening my skin tone, it's not deepening it. So for sure this is the palette to go for if you are just looking for the one that sort of suits a medium skin tone the best, and where you're going to be able to use everything and it work for you perfectly. If you are my shade twin, this is the one that I would go for. Okay, and this is the final palette look. I think we have a winner. I love individual shades from both of the other palettes. Like in here, I love this bronzer, so natural and buildable, and this gorgeous blush, just absolutely gorgeous. I know I'm going to be going into this palette just for this blush. And then when we have that gorgeous rich tones from the Lotus palette, this blush, absolutely stunning. And again, this shade as a highlight on deeper skin tones, stunning, but as a blush topper for me, speaks to me a lot. But I think as an overall palette, this is the winner, as it should be, because it is kind of, you know, the one that's targeted to me. And actually, although these blushes look a little scary and a little bright and a little pink in the pan, on my cheeks, I think they're gorgeous. So this is the winner for me. And as you would expect it to be, the medium palette, I think is the one that just suits me the best. And I can use everything in there as it was intended without sort of being careful or taking a lot of time building. Okay, so that is all of the demos on the skin. Now let's do some comparison swatches with previous palettes to see the real truth. The proof is in the pudding. We're going to see, although these are new shades, new blushes, new highlights, new bronzers, are they in fact new, or are they pretty much dupes of something from previous palettes? Let's find out. Okay, so I'm going to swatch by product. So let's start with highlighters. So let's start with this year's palettes. We have Dragon's highlighter, Evil Eyes highlighter, and then there are two highlighters in the Lotus Flower palette. Then we have last year's palettes, the Jellyfish highlighter, the Leopard highlighter, and then two from Snake. So again, I think you can see the highlighters in this year's Lotus Flower, the deepest palette, much deeper than last year's Snake palette, so that's great. Then we had 2022's Elephant and Tiger. So I think this is great to see actually how much deeper the Lotus Flower highlighters are in comparison to anything else. The limited edition Golden Rose edit from this year on the end there. And then this is Sculpture, very subtle highlighter, and the original Unlocked. So we've definitely got a bit more depth in the highlighters from this year's Lotus offering. Moving on to bronzers and starting again with this year's palettes, we have the Dragon bronzer, the Evil Eye, and the Lotus Flower. Last year's Jellyfish, Leopard, and Snake. So I think actually the Snake bronzer is maybe a hair deeper actually than this year's, and you can see these bronzers this year far more neutral. Let me just build this one up a little. I messed that swatch up. A lot more neutral. This bronzer from Leopard was so warm last year. That sort of took away from that palette for me. Much more natural, neutral, buildable tones this year. But I do think that bronzer in Lotus is a little disappointing. I wish that was deeper, having seen it in comparison. Let me see if I can build that. I can a little. I'd say it's probably now in line with last year's snake, but it is a much more sort of neutral undertone. Again, last year's was very warm. Definitely some more neutral options this year. Oh, and wait till you see 2022's, this elephant bronzer. Whew. So here we have elephant, poof, super duper orange. And then this was actually an ambient lighting powder that was in snake. Then we have the golden rose edit, sculpture, and unlocked. I wish we'd had a deeper bronzer this year. I'm just not sure that's gonna cut it. I'm definitely not going to get all of these blushes on my arm, but let's do what we can. Okay, so we have Dragon. And then the first two from Lotus Flower. And then these three are all from the Evil Eye. And then we have the two blushes and one highlighter from Lotus Flower. Jellyfish has two, and then we have 1, 2, and 3, which barely shows on me, from Leopard. So I'm going to wipe the rest of these off and leave the blush shades from this year to compare with the other palettes side by side. So here we have the 2 shades from Dragon, the 3 from the Evil Eye, and then the 3 from Lotus Flower. And now we're back swatching Snake. Definitely a bit more depth from that red blush. I'm going to do Snake along the top so that they're kind of near. I'm actually surprised, but there's still way more depth in that new red O blush from this year's Lotus Flower than there is in any other blushes which we've swatched so far. Great news. Okay, next we have 2 blushes in the Golden Rose edit, 2 from Sculpture, and 2 from Unlocked, including one of my favourite ever shades, which is quite similar actually to the apricot shade in the Lotus Flower. I'm actually going to swatch those 2 on the back of my hand so you can see them properly together. So that is this shade from the Unlocked palette, which is Nude Glow, one of my all-time favourite blushes from Hourglass, and like one of the last times they ever did a sort of neutral peachy blush. And it is reminding me of this bad boy, which is Desert Flush. They look kind of close to me in these swatches. Not as close as I thought, a similar tone for sure, but totally different finishes. The Nude Glow is obviously one of their strobe blushes, almost like a highlighter, and then this is the ambient lighting formula from Lotus Flower. So similar shade, but not a similar finish. Well, holy flipping moly, I'm rather exhausted after all of that. I can only imagine how you feel. I really hope this has helped you. I think the short story is I love these palettes. As I said at the beginning, I'm always so excited for this launch every year. They never disappoint me, these products on the cheeks. I think, you know, if this color story isn't calling your name and it's not really speaking to you, that's one thing, but I'm never disappointed in their performance. They always look gorgeous on the skin. They're glowy, they're luminous, they just look so pretty on the skin. I find the powders very forgiving and easy to use, and these are no exception. They feel especially soft. I'm noticing a lot of difference when I'm swatching these in comparison to previous years, how soft and buttery they feel this year, which isn't a fair test because obviously all of these other palettes are past their use by date, most likely. Not that that means anything around here, but they do, you know, products do go past their best. So that's a bit of an unfair comparison perhaps, but they do feel super soft, very easy to blend, very buildable, very forgiving, like I said, very smooth and luminous and gorgeous on the skin. Exactly the type of finishes I live for. I think overall, this is the deepest palette, is probably the best we've seen from Hourglass. No marbling, and we've actually got a bronzer and a finishing powder for deeper skin tone, along with this blush, which I think is the deepest blush I've ever seen from Hourglass. So more baby steps forward. We'd like to see giant steps, but baby steps are still steps. So again, I want to hear from a deeper skin community and see how they get along with this palette in reality and how it actually works on their skin tone. I'm very excited to see that, okay, because I think that red blush on a deeper skin tone is gonna be fire. This palette is perfect. This is Dragon, sorry. This is going to be perfect if you are fair skinned, if you have a light complexion. It's going to be very easy to use and undaunting, very forgiving, beautiful on your skin tone without being scary or too harsh or too much. It's going to be easy and undaunting for you to use. It does have 2 finishing powders. I'm so sorry for swearing. It does have 2 finishing powders, so that will either delight you or infuriate you. I'm in the second camp, okay? I don't really use these. They're the only thing I wish wasn't in these palettes. I'd rather an extra blush or 2. But if you love those powders, you'll be super duper happy that you have a choice of 2. And I think everything in here will work gorgeously for lighter skin tone. And I think up to a light medium, even a medium, you'll be able to use everything other than the finishing powders in here. So that's great. I think the most versatile and my favorite has to be the Evil Eye. It's just got the perfect tones that I love. Obviously everything in here is tailored to my skin tone, a medium skin tone, and that's perfect, but it's only got 1 finishing powder. It has 3 blushes with different level of glow to them. We've got something more subtle, something more vibrant. We've got a much more neutral bronzer and a forgiving highlighter. It's just exactly my cup of tea. If I could have designed a palette, I would have taken out the finishing powder and had another blush, to be honest with you. But other than that, I could have made this myself. If I was buying for myself, I would go for this color story and the dragon artwork, because I think that's just the most stunning. It's gorgeous. But there you have it. I wish I could say I was going for a lie down, but the reality is I've got about 3 hours of editing ahead of me, so that's not so true. Then I'll be going for a lie down after the school run and dinner. But I hope you found this video helpful. I tried my best to do as much as possible to help you guys. As I said, these will most likely sell out. It's just a case of when, but you know, never go broke for makeup, never go in debt for makeup, as I always tell you. And please remember, you're going to see a lot of creators, a lot of posts on Instagram where people have purchased all 3 of these palettes. Like me, being a content creator, I purchased all 3 because I knew that was going to be helpful for my review. I knew you guys would want to choose between them and see which I liked best, see which worked on my skin tone the best. So that's why I purchased all 3. That's going to become like normal. You're going to see a lot of that because if you follow a lot of content creators on Instagram, you're going to see a lot of us posting all 3 palettes, but that is not the norm, okay? That is not what's expected. No one's expecting you to buy 3 of these. They're extortionately expensive and we all only have one face. And these palettes are very specifically sort of tailored to each skin tone depending on depth. And yes, you might, you know, like shades in all 3 of them. And if money is no object, then you have money to burn. Of course, do whatever makes you happy. But please don't feel like everybody is buying all 3 of these. It's just because you're seeing a lot of content creators post about them, and that's a different scenario. Remember, content creators make a profit off of their makeup. So just remember that. Don't feel pressured, don't feel FOMO. It's absolutely normal and like what is intended by Hourglass releasing these 3 to choose the one that speaks to you most or suits your skin tone the most and just purchase that one if it's something that gives you joy. So please just remember, it's not normal or necessary to buy all 3 of these palettes just because a lot of it feels like everybody did. But I promise you that's just content creators or maybe collectors or people who just love these palettes and get a lot of use out of it. Please know it's very normal and absolutely fine to just choose your favorite. But I hope you enjoyed this video and you did find it helpful. If you are on the fence as to whether or not you want to buy one of these palettes or which one to buy or whether any of them are necessary to your collection, thank you so much for joining me here today. I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.